My hat here says Allah, and I'm not a Muslim. I just like wearing a hat that says Allah because I have a perverse sense of humor. And while I'm wearing my hat that says Allah, I want to criticize Jesus. And my occasion for criticizing Jesus is Luke's parable of the Ten Minas, and that is in chapter 19, with particular reference through verses 11 through 27. Verse 27 is especially controversial, and there's a lot of debate over what the parable means. But I think it's very straightforward. If you have knowledge of Christian prophecy, then can all be explained by referring to Christian prophecy. Okay, so the story basically is that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. As he goes through Jericho, a crowd gathers. They've heard of Jesus. They're excited that he's come. And they're very interested and eager to see him, to hear him speak. And as he passes through Jericho and through the crowd, he spots a man named Zacchaeus, who is a publican. And a publican was a tax collector. Publicans were generally hated because, no one likes paying taxes. And they were just thought to be immoral. They were like collaborationists because the publicans, tax collectors, what they were called is tax farmers, because tax farmers were privatized tax collectors. They had a contract. I'm not sure if it was from Herod or directly from Rome. My guess is it was from Herod. In any case, the tax collectors collected the taxes. They paid it over to Herod and kept the percentage of some amount. In any case, Jesus meets with Zacchaeus, and he basically invites himself to Zacchaeus' house, where there's still another gathering, and they're very excited about Jesus. And this is where it gets interesting. They're very excited about Jesus because, as verse 11 says, they thought that the kingdom of God should immediately appear. Which means the kingdom of God is, the millennium, the perfect existence on earth, when Jesus comes as a Messiah to rule for a millennium of perfect peace and harmony and justice and all kinds of good things, free bubblegum. Verse 12, this is where he starts to get into the parable. He's telling this because the crowd is really worked up and they're excited about him, and they think he's going to solve all their problems right away because he's almost in Jerusalem. He told a parable. He said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. The nobleman is to be understood as Jesus. The far country is heaven. The kingdom he's going to receive is where he's come from, which is earth, and he will return. And he called his 10 servants. The servants are ministers in the faith. Anybody who considers themselves a servant of Jesus can be a servant of Jesus, but they have a duty to perform, or maybe I should say duties, plural. And so he called his servants. It says 10 servants. He gave them, King James Bible calls it 10 pounds. Other versions call it minas. The parable is known as the parable of the 10 minas. And he gave them this wealth. And you have to understand what the wealth really is. The nobleman is Jesus, and the wealth he's giving his servants, his disciples, is the church. All the people who follow him and his disciples and either call themselves then or become known as Christians. And then he tells them, occupy till I come, which is kind of interesting because it seems to me to be a denial of the rapture. Occupy till I come. There will be no rapture before Jesus comes back. So that seems to me there will be no rapture. And verse 14, but his citizens hated him and sent a message after him saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. Well, we all know that the citizens were the people in Judea, um, and I think you could include the Romans too, who felt threatened by Jesus. Basically, they were the establishment, and we all know they crucified him, which, by the way, is a Roman punishment, not a Jewish punishment. And it came to pass that when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, to whom he left behind his church, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. What he wants to know is how well his servants did at growing the church, which they've done pretty well because it's now about 1/3 of the earth's population. Then came the first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. That's verse 16. Verse 17, and he said unto him, Well, thou good servant, because thou hast been faithful in a very little, have thou authority over 10 cities. Jesus is pleased. He will reward the good servant. He will reward the minister and give him authority over other Christians. And another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, I've skipped ahead. The second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And so, while he hasn't done as well as the first, he's done pretty well. He's increased his church membership 5-fold. And then the third came. He says, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Thou takest up that thou layedst not down, and reapest that thou didst not sow. Which means this guy was perhaps a little jealous of Jesus, and he didn't want to work hard for Jesus because it wasn't his money. It didn't matter to him, and any success he had, he would be deprived, he felt. And verse 22, Jesus' reply, and he saith unto him, Out of thine own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. Thou knewest that I was an austere man, taking up that I laid not down, and reaping that I did not sow. Where then thou gavest not thou my money into the bank, that at my coming I might have required mine own with usury? So, why didn't you do it? And he said unto them that stood by, Take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. Meaning, boy, you're really, really heaping reward on this guy who did so well for you. And Jesus continues in verse 26, For I say unto you that unto every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not, even that he hath shall be taken away from him. So those who are dedicated and try hard for me will be rewarded, and those who do not exert themselves on my behalf will be punished. But then here's the part that's really, really very controversial. It's the last verse of the parable, verse 27, chapter 19. The nobleman says, But those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. And so that last verse, what he's saying is, you are to grow the church while I'm gone. And all we know is Jesus is gone, he's in heaven, and Christians expect him back any minute now. Could be in 5 minutes, could be in 10 years, could be in another 2,000 years, who knows. Any minute, he's coming back. And so, in his absence, and he's absent now, Christians are to proselytize, they're to grow the church. And when he comes back, he will rule. And that's Christian prophecy right there. It's very consistent with Christian prophecy. And when he comes back to rule, anyone who resists his rule will be killed by his followers, because that is his instructions to his followers. And that explanation is very consistent. It's very coherent with everything else we already know about the Bible. And we know Jesus is going to throw people into hell if they don't get with the program. So why won't he kill them before he throws them into hell, right?